All right. Hello, everybody. Dr. Tony Hampton is on the show today. Thank you for coming on the channel. Dr. Tony Hampton is a family doctor. Been a family doctor, I believe, since 1998, if I am not mistaken.
That's
And
that's about right.
all right, thank you. And he he authored the book, um, "Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes," um, and that I'm going to put a link for that on Amazon for everybody. So if you are not familiar with that book, then you can go check it out. So let me put that in here real quick. Here we go. And here it is on the screen. So, Dr. Tony Hampton, thank you for coming on today. How are you?
I'm having a beautiful day. I know before we started, I was just telling you how blessed I was feeling. I We had a Chicago meetup with some fellow carnivores, but that meeting was created by Carrie of the Homestead How YouTube channel, as he's trying to share the healing message that eating an animal-based diet can help us achieve. And he came all the way to Chicago from Wisconsin to join me. He also had Adam supporting him as wanted to record some uh, things related to carnivore and diet. And my focus for the documentary will be around diabetes. But it was just nice to meet him in person, some other folk who I hadn't seen in person, like the carnivorous grandmommy, who's not a grandmommy in my eyes, but she's doing her thing, and others who joined us, some carnivore twins that joined us as well. So it was just cool, man. And I felt so much warmth and love, and I, uh, I don't know what else to tell you. Just having a community, whether you're checking this out, whether you're low carb, keto, or carnivore, and for those who are on my channel, absolutely check out Brian's channel. And on my YouTube channel, I had his YouTube channel in the link. He also has a link tree, and I saw in your link tree you shared my book as well. I appreciate that. Let's work as a kind of like as a grassroots effort to spread this healing message. And we're not that concerned if you're any of these particular dietary patterns, but what we are concerned about is whether or not you're going to understand that lifestyle is the key. So no matter how far you take it, we want everybody checking us out to benefit from all the things that have benefited us. Now, I know this is your stream, but do me a real quick favor, Brian, for my audience. Could you just quickly tell them what got better when you started your dietary change?
Sure. So I started about 16 months ago, actually 16 and a half months ago, on the carnivore diet. And I had all kinds of joint pain, back pain, arthritis. Didn't have a lot of energy levels. I was really tired a lot and didn't want to do things. Had a little bit of mild depression, high blood pressure, and then AFib,
Mm,
atrial fibrillation. And so that's, where you go into these episodes of your heart starting to race and so forth. That was a pretty big deal for me. It started in 2018, and before I had gone on carnivore, I was having a couple episodes a week.
hmm
Within about the first month or so into carnivore, the joint pain was gone, back pain, all of that kind of stuff. And I noticed that the AFib episodes had gone away. I wasn't having them.
Okay.
So for me, yeah, early on, I had a lot of big things starting up already, right? And again, I went to carnivore. So I'm just like you. I am a proponent of low carb,
Yeah,
whether it's carnivore, keto, ketovore, or
that's
whatever it
right.
is, right?
Right.
But for me, I just seem to do better with carnivore.
Yeah.
I did try a couple months with keto before that, and I don't know if it just wasn't long enough or what, but I wasn't seeing a whole lot of change. And that's when I saw the changes when I went to carnivore. Um, so for me, if I fast forward now, just a couple weeks ago, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, I went back to my cardiologist.
hmm
I'm now like 15 months without a single episode of AFib, and he took me off the medication.
Nice.
He said the risk is now low for stroke and going back into AFib and so forth. So
That's right.
that's a big win for me that, I was able to get off the medication. I still do take blood pressure medication.
Mhm.
Blood pressure is good, but it's not like it's really low with the
Right.
medication.
Right.
So I'm still taking that. But other than that, like I said, the arthritis, all that stuff is gone.
Yeah.
I have better energy levels. I just feel like going out and doing things and so forth. It's just been great.
Well, I appreciate the blood pressure comment because I just took a patient who is on a similar journey. I think they're more ketovore, and she came in. Her blood pressure was like 89/50, right? And I was like, whoa! And so I had to reduce 2 medicines simultaneously. There is no medicine that will impact your blood pressure like lifestyle changes. So for anybody who's suffering from high blood pressure checking us out tonight, please understand that the root cause of your blood pressure is probably too much insulin being created. And that too much insulin causes constriction, leads to the influx of sodium being reabsorbed into your arteries, inflammation. And that's what's going to cause your problem. So it's the inflammation. It's not, you don't have a medicine deficiency. There's no such thing as a medication deficiency. What you have is you use the medicine as bridge therapy. That's why Brian is saying, I'm going to take my medicine for now because I'm not like that patient I just described. So you take it until you heal. And then when you heal, you can then start to wean off medicine, which is what I'm going to be doing for this patient. Now, when it comes to AFib, it is so common for people to not be aware that their weight has a lot to do with whether or not they had AFib. You lost about, how much did you lose? About 80, did you say?
Yeah, it's about 80 pounds.
Right. So all that extra, that's a little child, right? So you lost a child. And when you lose a child from your body, it takes pressure off your heart, but it also does what caused the hypertension. It takes the inflammation out of your heart. And I'll always share over and over again when I got my certification in obesity medicine that they taught us that for every BMI above 25, you increase your risk for AFib by 4%. So if your BMI is 40, that's 15 times 4. So that's 60% increased risk for AFib. But the good news is that when you reduce the weight, your risk for that inflammation being present goes down. And for many patients, they're able to fix their AFib simply by making dietary changes. That does not mean we don't take medicines like beta blockers to store our heart while we're going through this. That does not mean that if we need ablation where you go and fix the AFib in some people that you don't do that. But if you can fix this with diet, that's the least risky thing you can do. And it's all it's an individual thing. Some people just need a procedure in that moment because they're in high risk. But man, getting off medicine, especially blood thinners, because you've made a dietary change, that is a win. So I'm really excited for you as we start this conversation. There's some healing, guys, that will occur if you simply learn these principles and then test them on yourself. And so whether you land on low carb, keto, or carnivore is not our concern. Our concern is that you actually are better than you were last year and that next year you'll be better than you are today.
Yeah, definitely well said there, Dr. Tony. So everybody in the chat, go ahead and answer or ask any questions you have with the Q in the front.
That's
so
right.
Make sure you put a Q in the front so it's easy for us to see it. In the meantime, while they might be working on questions, I do have a couple of questions that I wanted to start out with for you. So the first one here, this is one, let me kind of build up the story because I get this question a lot. So like when I'm doing different live streams and so forth, right? So someone has a family member that is metabolically sick. They have autoimmune disease or whatever it is, right? And their question is always, when I go to talk to that family member, I tell them about how well I'm doing with, whether it's carnivore, keto, whatever, but they just don't want to listen. So their question is, how do I reach that person and get them to listen to me? you
Mhm.
have a good answer for that? Because that's always a question that's asked a lot, and it's just really very hard to answer that question.
Yeah, and I've said in other, live streams, podcasts, YouTube videos that you try to meet people where they are. The most important, testimony you can give is your personal testimony. So sometimes, first of all, you have to accept that you can't impact everybody. There are definitely family members that I have who are not as interested in achieving what we would describe as metabolic health as I would like to see them achieve it. And part of that is because they don't understand the life-changing benefits. So what I start with is my personal story. So when people, if I talk to a plant-based person, I was a vegetarian for 8 years or so. My argument to them is I feel my best on a animal-based diet, in my particular case, carnivore. So I start there because I think you have to help people understand that this is what I feel has been great for me. And then they may say, well, that's dangerous. And then I'll say, well, these lower carb dietary patterns have been endorsed by large organizations. So if you have diabetes, it's okay to share with them that the American Diabetes Association endorses this diet now. And if you're a diabetic again and you have an endocrinologist and who looks at you funny and cross-eyed when you say keto or carnivore, you say, well, by the way, the Association of Clinical Endocrinology endorses low carb and keto. Oh, by the way, for those who are concerned about saturated fat causing heart disease, oh my goodness, why would the American Heart Association endorse low carb and keto? So part of it is to share that information. And what was funny about the American Heart Association's endorsement, they actually had to put an additional addendum to their recommendation to consider that dietary pattern. And it said that if you do keto, um, and carnivore is a more extreme form of keto, be careful because the blood pressure is going to drop. Oh, that's a good side effect. We want the blood pressure to drop so we can get off the medicine. So it's so effective that the blood pressure will drop and you have to be careful. Oh, by the way, the doctors who, and this is what I would share. I did a video. If you search my name in DASH versus keto, most clinicians would say to you, we follow the DASH diet. Now, me and you, we know that that's not a good idea, Brian, because although it's the recommendation, we know that a lot of the recommendations in that diet are eat a lot of fruit, eat a lot of grains. And if insulin being too high is the problem with your blood pressure, leading to that salt being reabsorbed, leading to those constricted arteries because you're not making nitroglycerin and all these other effects, why would I then say eat a lot of grains and fruit, right? Now, so we finally have a study that was done in June that was keto versus DASH. You can search that or you can check out that video I did on YouTube. And in that study, they found that the keto diet, and carnivore's a version of that, was twice as effective for not just diabetes, not just hypertension, but also for obesity. So so now that we have a randomized controlled trial telling us that keto is okay, I would put that in front of people and say, "Hey, there's some evidence that this is safe and carnivore is a version of low carb and keto." And if they want to see some other observational study, not a randomized controlled trial, but they did do a study behavioral characteristics in carnivores that was, I think, using some of the folk that follow Sean Baker. And of that 2029 population, 95% reported positive outcomes. That's a pretty, not too many drugs can say that. So although we still need more randomized controlled trials, there is enough evidence to at least say anecdotally and personally, this is absolutely a diet to consider. And it should be a diet to fear, particularly when you can celebrate 80 pounds lost. Now, if you get to a point where people are not hearing that, that's okay. That's why we're working on the carnivore documentary and other things to get this message out. Because what we do is we go from one church to the next. And I'm using that as a, church, right? And we preach this message and we know we're not going to get the entire group to hear it. And that's okay. And then you go to the next church and then to the next church. And then you just hope that enough people learn this message so that we can heal our population.
All right. We do have a question in the chat, so I'm going to go to that one next.
Yes.
Let me bring that up. This is from Tina. Hi, Brian and Tony. I understand carnivore, but what is ketovore? I'm not sure I could only eat meat. I don't really like meat.
Well, first of all, I love this question because what you don't want to do is adopt a dietary pattern because it does miracles, but you don't like meat. So now for me, if I see a cow walk by the house, he has no chance. I'm going to eat that cow, right? Now for other people, they don't want to eat cows. So what I would say to this is number one, a low carb diet can be as high as less than 120 to 130 carbs per day. Now, that sounds like a high number to us, but for people who on average eat 250 to 400 carbs a day, which is pretty much the standard American diet, that's a pretty low number. When you start talking about keto, in order to know you're in ketosis, you really want to get your carbs to under about 50 grams a day. And I would say total carbs is better than net carbs, where you subtract the fiber and the sugar alcohols. If you want to be what we call, Dr. Eric Westman would say, if you want to be therapeutic keto, you want to get that number to under 20 carbs a day. Now, other people in the low carb keto community have framed this ketovore. People like Nisha Berry, for example, Dr. Kim Berry's wife, who's doing wonderful work. And they pretty much would say in that 10 or less carbs per day, it's kind of ketovore. And then, of course, if you're avoiding meat altogether, except for a few splurge days, you're kind of in that carnivore category. All these are just labels. And what I tell people is the following. There are things that you may tolerate. So let's just say you heal and you're, reporting great success like Brian and I have had. And for me, it was my stomach. And you tolerate avocados, then eat your avocados. If you tolerate certain vegetables or fruit, like green beans, for example, is something I can tolerate. So when I have my non-carnivore moments, when I'm more ketovore, I just eat the things that I tolerate that doesn't cause harm. And I think that's a better approach. Would you be better served to just go, lion diet where you just eat, beef, salt, and water? You can do that. But I think for most people, they will find that they don't necessarily have to go that far. So you eliminate everything, do an elimination diet, eat just meat, and then you add back things that historically haven't bothered you or that you want to mess around with. But I would have no problem with anybody being in that ketovore category if they tolerate that. And that's kind of where my wife lives. She lives in kind of that category. So we'll have all this meat, and then she may have some yellow squash, or something like that. And that's kind of how we do things in my home.
Okay. That is great. A lot of people in the chat saying hi and everything. So hello to everybody. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and put a Q in front of it so that we can easily find it. Next question that I had queued up here for you. This one has to do with iodine. Mm-hmm. Is low iodine a concern on a low carb diet? And if so, what are the best foods to eat to fulfill your iodine needs?
Yeah, iodine is always important. When I think about iodine, I worry about, and one of the things I love about, this is one I want to say first. Most doctors never get any training in nutrition. So if your doctor doesn't have training in nutrition, don't feel some kind of way about that, because that's just what happens in most health systems, right? So, but I was fortunate to, spend a little extra time trying to learn about, what is it that I need to know about nutrition. So I got a master's in nutrition. But so if you don't have enough iodine in your diet, you'll probably feel depressed. I think most of us think about iodine when we think about like a goiter. So when you go to countries where they don't put, when there's not enough iodine in the food, in the salt, then you may be at increased risk for things like goiter. So that's important to know. Some people have weight changes, some people have skin problems, cold hands, and things like that. So that's what you want to be thinking about. Thankfully, the minerals, if you go to the Alps and the Appalachians and things like that, a lot of those areas, the soil has, technically should have iodine in it, but there are so many things happening in the environment that make it very hard to get enough iodine in our diet, right? And so we want to avoid that. So now, we're kind of talking the language of carnivore, and that's why people bring this question up because what's probably the best source of iodine is probably things like seaweed, right? Now, and you can get it from things like seafood. You can get it. So when you're a carnivore, there's some iodine coming from seafood. There's some iodine coming from dairy, particularly raw milk and things like that. But a lot of the sources of iodine are also from non-carnivore sources. So again, the next question becomes: should a carnivore have to supplement? And the answer, it kind of depends. For the most part, the answer is no. If you eat enough seafood and dairy, you may get enough. I actually personally take Keto Chow's mineral supplement. I know that LMNT is like the most popular one out there these days, and I don't think that has iodine particularly, but it's more of electrolyte. But the reason why I take Keto Chow's mineral supplement is because it has all of the minerals, including selenium and obviously magnesium, potassium, salt, and things like that. But it has a little bit more than your typical electrolyte supplement. The question is, do I need to take it at all? And I'm going to say, not necessarily. I actually didn't start taking any type of mineral supplements until about 3 months ago when I started getting some cramps sometimes at night. And I noticed when I started those, I didn't have any at all. But I actually went nearly a year without any. So I think you can get most of what you need in your diet. But always remember, you're going to lose magnesium, potassium, salt when you're doing low carb, keto, or carnivore. So it's not unreasonable to add some of that stuff back. So I think if you're looking to have kind of a, just trying to be extra safe, it's probably not a bad idea to supplement. But if you want to be a pure carnivore, you may want to just do the dairy and the seafood to get your sources from that.
Okay. Thank you. Great answer there. We do have another question in chat. Let me bring that up. This is from Greg, My Weight Loss Life. Can you take too much magnesium?
Yes, you can take too much everything. And magnesium is, if you think about like milk of magnesia, right? Well, that is it helps you to have bowel movement. So the first thing you should be aware of is that if you're treating your body to maybe replace those electrolytes, if you have too much magnesium, you can get diarrhea, and that's the first thing. But although we use magnesium for cramps, if you have too much magnesium, because your electrolytes have to be balanced, you can actually get cramps from too much magnesium. You can clearly get nauseated as well, and so I think it's important to not overdo it. I think if your bowel movements are normal, you're probably okay. But other than that, you're probably going to be fine. People use magnesium for sleep. They use it for blood pressure. They use it for stress. Of the minerals that we worry about, magnesium is probably the most deficient, and it's probably involved in when I was in my training, it was over 300 or so metabolic processes that you need magnesium for. So if you ask Dr. Hampton, what do I take for supplements? Well, I now take the minerals that I mentioned with Keto Chow. Doesn't have to be that brand, but that's what I take. I take omega-3 because I will eat the cow before I eat the fish. I just like ruminant animals. And I think vitamin D. I take vitamin D3 K2 because the K2 will help usher the calcium that's being absorbed by the vitamin D away from your arteries, away from your joints into your bone, because if it's in your arteries, increased risk for heart disease. With the calcium in your joints, increased risk for arthritis. So those are all the ones I read. Sometimes I do a probiotic, but for the most part, that's what I take. And then so you want to take what you think you need based on your particular situation. And for me, I think most of what your nutrition should look like comes from your plate, not from that bottle of supplements.
Okay. So let's change direction here a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about like sugar and artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
There's a lot of foods out there that will say that there's no sugar in them, or then no to little carbs, but in the ingredients list, they have a couple of different artificial sweeteners. How bad are those artificial sweeteners for you? Because a lot of people are just seeing that there's no sugar and no carbs, and they're thinking it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that artificial sweeteners, as a general rule, are not bad if taken periodically. You can always find a study that will say artificial sweeteners are bad. And I don't suggest you look at artificial sweeteners as a health food ever, right? So, number one, what I tell patients is the following. If you use it periodically, you shouldn't worry, because it's going to, when they do studies, they give really high doses of this stuff rather than mice or humans. And that high dose is not likely to reflect reality. Number two, what's more important? The potential that Splenda is going to harm you, or the fact that you avoided the sugar that's going to definitely harm you? So I'm like others in this space I'm more concerned with those glucose spikes. So if you give me something that has Splenda or some type of artificial sweetener in it, but it doesn't cause glucose spikes, that's a nice bridge between where you currently are addicted to sugar. Maybe use an artificial sweetener as a bridge therapy. And then maybe down the road, you get rid of that because you only want to put the best fuel in your car. So I'm not going to put fake food in my car if I can put real food in my car. When it comes to what sweeteners I would attempt to consume, even as a carnivore, if I decided to have a day to indulge, it's my indulgence day, right? And we can make, Maria Emmerich and others have great cookbooks where they use replacements. The replacements that we tend to consider, it kind of starts with things like monk fruit, but I would say pure monk fruit, because it has a slightly better, less of an aftertaste than stevia. Then I would consider allulose, and then I would consider stevia. Those are the three that I feel are pretty good starting places, but keep in mind that even those, which are from better sources, are still highly processed in many cases. So it's not health food. It's just a way to eat something that won't spike your sugar, so you can honor that part of your life. You're not insulin resistant and having risk for that, while also indulging every once in a while in the things that you once ate. So, but the good news about these things is, like the diet doctor, one of the things we make commonly is a low carb chocolate cake, and they don't really use artificial sweeteners, but there's enough like sweetness in that dark chocolate that, or you can put some whipped cream on it that'll kind of set it off. So you have to, so that's why I like Maria Emmerich, because she'll say, well, I can show you how to make lasagna, and we'll just make a lasagna that's carnivore. So it's all about the ingredients, and you can make a protein sparing bread where it's mostly just egg whites and protein. So there's a way to get, so if you really want those things that we desire, there's a way to do it without putting yourself at risk. But I do not lose any sleep over artificial sweeteners. I focus on the ones I've mentioned, but I try not to make that something I consume on a regular basis. In fact, I rarely consume them at all. So I encourage you guys to do the same.
All right, great info. Next question in the chat from Shell. Your thoughts on coffee? I can't seem to give it up. I froth butter into it and love it.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. Coffee is a beautiful thing. One of the things that when I was talking to Carrie of Homestead How, as we were filming, we talked about how carnivore makes you feel like you in the movie Limitless, and you just feel like this sense of mental clarity, your brain's on steroids, and you can just do anything. Well, there are moments when I've consumed coffee and I felt the same way. So coffee is a beautiful thing. It is a bean, so it's not carnivore, but I'll tell you, it's for me, it's about tolerance. And I think Huberman and some other folk were talking about how they wait about 2 hours before they start their coffee, because you won't have that letdown later in the day, like around noon. So that may be something to consider. Start your day, drink some water, and maybe have coffee maybe 2 hours later. The cream, the butter, that's really not a big deal. If you're going to do a sweetener, you may want to do the pure monk fruit, like we talked about, stevia. But as a purist, you would say don't do coffee, particularly if you're a carnivore. But I'm not a purist. What I'm saying is, if you enjoy coffee, it doesn't bother your stomach, which is why I don't drink it often. I don't drink it often because I have an irritable bowel history. It is a little bit of a diuretic, make you pee a lot. It makes your stomach crampy a little bit. It irritates it for some people. Obviously, as close to organic as possible, because they spray these beans. But in general, we are totally okay with coffee. There's a list of benefits that are helpful about coffee in people. So so I'm actually okay with coffee. Again, you can go down this rabbit hole of antioxidants and all the bad things in plants, and you can go down that rabbit hole. But I think it's more about tolerance. And if you tolerate it and you love it, which so many people do, I actually don't have a problem with it. It's really about individualizing what's best for you. And if you tolerate it, why not?
Mhm. All right. I'm just so you know, I'm not a coffee drinker at all. I don't drink
Yeah.
coffee, but
Yeah, that's fair.
some people are and some people aren't. So
Man, it's like taking crack from a crackhead. It's hard to give up. It's tough. It's tough.
yeah. All right. Next question we have here. This one's an interesting one. Being on ketovore for 8 weeks now, started getting pimples, breakout in face and upper body. What gives?
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations on your journey, and we really are proud of you. Although we're just meeting, but one of the things I love about being on a live stream is that you get a chance to provide clarity. And what I tell patients, if you start keto, there are some potential side effects as you're healing, right? And so the question is, what do you worry about? Well, you worry about keto flu. We also call it carb withdrawal. You worry about things like headache, being, tired. Some people get brain fog because they're used to glucose energy, and now you're giving them fat fuel, which are ketones. Some people, because they don't get the right fuel, are going to be a little irritated. Some people, it feels like you have the flu sometimes. Some people get nauseated. And of course, you can get constipated and have sleep issues. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough is something called a keto rash. And I think it's the medical term is I think it's like pigmatosa or something like that. I think that's what it is. And it's a rash that can occur when you are going into this dietary pattern. People get it on their trunk, on their back, things like that. You see it more common in young adults than you do in older adults, but it actually will go away. So I anticipated, I don't know how old the commenter is, but it usually happens early in the process, and it usually will go away. So I would just kind of hang in there and anticipate that'll go away. The good news is, if you kind of know it's not unexpected, then you won't be surprised when it happens. So your body's going through a tremendous change right now, and this is just a manifestation. The folk at the homeopathic say you just detoxify. It's just all the toxins are coming out of your body. That's all that is. It's a keto rash.
Okay.
Right.
Next question here. How do you deal with a spouse who is still on the standard American diet? He buys things that are so tempting and I fail at times. So aggravating that he buys so much junk and won't hide it from me.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to have a coming to Jesus moment. And what you're doing is, and I love Dave Ramsey, who, does the financial stuff on YouTube, the baby steps and all of that. And one of the things that he would say is, we're gonna put the kids to bed. We're gonna turn off the TV, and we're gonna have a come to Jesus moment. And in that moment, and I do this in clinic, I literally, after I see patients, I'll say, call your spouse. And what we do is we're asking for uh, them to be a resource of support. So the compromise may look like this. You may say, if I see the tempting snack on the counter, it's going to trigger me. Can we agree to not have it on the counter? And he may have to have him a little stash somewhere, because we're not going to, we're not expecting him to make this change because he may not be ready. So I think what you do is you have a moment when you say, this means so much to me that I really want you to partner with me to help me along my way. And what you're hoping is that your spouse will hear you, because you turned the TV off, you put the kids to bed, and you're like, this is something I really want you to help me with. And if you have any chronic health conditions that you're doing this for, you say, I really don't want to be on this blood sugar medicine anymore. I really don't want to have high blood pressure anymore. I really don't want to be sick anymore. I want to have more energy so we can do things together. I want to be able to hike with you one day. And I really believe that my diet is going to be the key. Would you walk with me so that I don't have those triggers at home? And if you do that with me, I'll really be grateful. And I think having a heart-to-heart conversation with another adult who cares about you, they will hear you in a way they've never heard you before.
Great tips. All right. So here's somebody giving us some of their numbers. Triglycerides 0.56, cholesterol 6.68, HDL 2.16, LDL 4.42. Are these okay?
All right. First of all, if you have an Airbnb in Barbados, can you at least let us know? Me and my friend here, I have a double date. We'll bring our wives. But anyway, what I want to say is the scale that they use in the Barbados area is a little different than ours. But just based on what I've learned in the past, it looks like the triglycerides are low. It looks like the cholesterol and the LDL may be a little on the higher side, and it looks like the HDL is okay. So the scale is a little off. So instead of commenting on the numbers specifically, your goal with this dietary pattern and what you should expect is that your triglycerides are going to go down. You're going to expect your HDL to go up. Your cholesterol may still be elevated, and your LDL may be elevated. I would say most people on low carb, keto, or carnivore will find that their LDL will go up a little bit, then it'll stabilize, but it may still ride a little higher than maybe it was. But you don't really care. What you want to do is ask your clinician to order a particle size for the LDL, because again, it's the quality of the LDL particle that you care about. So if you have a lot of large and not a lot of small, you're pretty much okay. There's additional tests you can do: apoprotein beta 8 ratio. You can do inflammatory markers like SED rates and CRPs. You can do like a lipoprotein, a small particle A test. There's other tests you can do. You can get a heart scan. But so assuming you follow that guidance, that the triglycerides are going down, HDL is going up, you're fine. But it's just the scale that's got us a little off, which is what I love about YouTube. You can reach people all over the world. And it's just that they use different ways to measure these things as we do compared to the United States.
Okay. All right. Next question here in chat. My lineage is American descendant of slavery. I'm hosting Thanksgiving. Do I force keto on my family or serve our dishes? Dressing, macaroni, candied sweet potatoes, rolls, sweet potato pie, etc.
Woo, that's an American lady for you, right? Well, it is a philosophy that you have to decide. I have patients who agree to indulge on the holidays for a day or two, and then they go back to their, low carb, keto, or carnivore. I say that's okay for people who don't have issues with processed food addiction, and some people will be triggered by these moments of indulgence, right? I think about Russ Mitchell of the Homesick Buckeye channel, and he insists I'm going to do what I do over the holidays. That's what he would say. But that works for some people, and some people are not built like Russ. They can't do that. So that's the first question you have to ask yourself. The second thing is there a way to go to an event like this where you honor some of the things that they are accustomed to, and then you sprinkle in some of the things that won't harm them? For example, historically before, and I still make mac and cheese cauliflower for my family. I tend to be carnivore, so I don't really eat it much anymore. But you can take that macaroni and just use cauliflower, and you'll take that 45 carb macaroni, which is made from pasta, which is flour, not real food, and you'll turn it into a 4 carb serving of mac and cheese made of cauliflower. Now, if you haven't tried that, you may say, "Ain't no way in the world, Doc. I'm the macaroni and cheese queen or king in my family. Ain't no way in the world I'm gonna mess that up." But I will tell you personally, I had a person in my family, shout out to my cousin Carol, who was kind of known for mac and cheese. And once she tasted our version of the mac and cheese, she was shocked and amazed how good it tastes. Why did it taste the same? Well, because pasta has no taste and cauliflower has no taste. Everything else that you put in that recipe, all that delicious cheese and other ingredients, it's the same. So if you make the little cauliflower about the right size, etc. So I think that's how I would approach it. You have to decide which way to go. I always go to family events with the types of foods, because we do potlucks a lot, that will serve me. I always tell people if they're cooking a meat, I got to have meat without barbecue sauce. And I'll make sure that we bring, so if my wife's interested in greens or string beans, we'll bring that. And we won't have to eat the spaghetti and the mac and cheese and the rolls and those other things. And nobody really cares. Like, one of the things that your mama may care, or that favorite aunt who slaved over that mac and cheese may care. But for the most part, people don't care. You just fill your plate with the right stuff, get full off of that, and honor that. So that's how I would play that game. But always think about the holidays and plan. I know we got Thanksgiving coming up, and just be thoughtful about those holidays, so that you don't just show up and then you have to tolerate what's there. Always think ahead, talk to people in advance, and if they don't have what you need, you bring that dish yourself.
All right. And she has responded, "Thank you, Dr. Hampton. I will serve our traditional food and eat the turkey and greens. I am the macaroni and macaroni and cheese queen."
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, and again, we can still honor that, and we're not, if we periodically indulge in those, or we're not harming people. We're just going to message with people. Will look at you as the mac and cheese queen, and they'll see you changing, and they're going to get curious. So they'll say, "Man, what are you doing? I see you lost a few pounds. I see you're getting off medicine." And they're going to be curious. And for those who will be curious, they will be curious and then ask for your guidance.
Okay. I want to go back to Shell. She had asked the one question about her husband, and she says, "Thank you, Dr. Tony. I will give this a try. He's stubborn and has tunnel vision."
Yes, and he's a man, so I'm going to pray. But
yeah.
We got the same problem, trust me.
Another comment here I want to bring up really quick from CJ. "It is so refreshing to hear doctors willing to help and work with people to spread to spread health instead of pills. Thank you." So I definitely want to make sure.
Thank you, CJ. And I had to learn how to, I had to learn that medicine was not the secret. It only managed disease. When I learned to heal people and help them put diseases into remission or reverse it, it was all about diet. And we learned let food be thy medicine, but we don't apply it. And so once I learned to apply it, my whole clinical practice changed. So it didn't just help my patients, it helped me to feel like a real doctor. I went to school to heal people. And finally, after years of being essentially a drug dealer, I learned how to heal people by focusing on lifestyle changes. So it's been a remarkable change.
All right. I have another question that I had queued up that I'm going to ask. And this, you kind of touched a little bit on this one with the one question that was asked earlier, but let me ask this here. How do you know if a keto diet or a complete elimination of carbs like the carnivore or lion diet is the right diet for you?
Yeah, and that's just a clarifying question. And again, we want to individualize treatment. So I kind of started at low carb after being a plant-based doc, for several years. And what I found is that for me, my irritable stomach was still a little bit of an issue. So I said, well, let me go all the way down to keto, where I'm doing, less than 20 to 50 carbs a day. Same thing. I felt so much better as I started to remove plants. But really not until I got to carnivore did I start to feel normal when my stomach wasn't an issue. So most people will find that there is no perfect like answer to this question. It's really just a individual N of one experiment. And when you eliminate those foods that are known to be allergenic, right? Rather it's the fish, the shellfish, the nuts, the seeds, the dairies, the wheats, though when you eliminate those things and then you start to add back, you will then find that that is how you'll be able to then start to determine what you should and shouldn't eat. So the functional medicine people, and I'll try to see if I can find it, but there's a way to do an elimination diet, and with an elimination diet, you'll be able to add back in a fairly standard way the foods that are not going to harm you. So that's what I would ask people to do. Consider an elimination diet. Add back every 3 days or so the foods that you are considering adding back, and then the ones that bother you, you may want to just avoid. The ones that don't bother you, you can continue to eat. So there's no perfect answer. I just think that you have to do the experiment because each of us are different. And I'll just share in the comments like one of the resources that was from the functional medicine folk that teach us how to do that.
All right. I'm going to put this up on the screen real quick so everybody can see this.
Yeah. And if they just search functional medicine elimination diet PDF, it'll probably come up as well. So I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. So we're coming up on about 50 minutes. Just to be mindful of your time, we probably got about 10 more minutes left. Mm-hmm. So if you do have questions, please make sure you ask them in the chat here in the next couple of minutes. Going to let that stay on the window here for just an extra few seconds before I go to the next question. So we do have another question queued up here. All right, let me go to that question now. And is, what are your thoughts on water fasting in a duration? I'm debating on trying it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, everything that we do that benefits us are not required. So the first thing is you got to ask yourself, am I going to do this? And if I am, why am I doing it? But having said that, do I think fasting is a good thing for your body? Absolutely. I mean, just giving your body a break and just drinking water for a while, for 24 hours or a day or two is probably a good idea, especially when you're trying to kickstart a weight loss journey. Now, if you think about Dr. Jason Fung, he literally worked with his team, will get people to reverse diabetes within like a month. And there's no faster way to reverse diabetes than through fasting. Now, some people would argue it's bariatric surgery because you you reverse diabetes fairly quickly with that as well. But who wants to do bariatric surgery, right? So if your goal is to have better blood sugar control, if your goal is to lose weight, and you want to get the benefits of autophagy, which is, a process where we take our damaged cells, right, and we recycle them, allowing the body to then regenerate healthy cells, right? That's a pretty cool thing. So you get rid of old cells. Autophagy is amazing. And if you want to, increase the risk or increase the chances that your heart's going to be healthy, but more importantly, if you want to decrease inflammation, right? Fasting is a wonderful way to kind of do that. I'm a thinner guy. I didn't have a weight problem. I had a stomach problem. So if I fast too much, I'll probably disappear. So I don't fast in that way. I do intermittent fasting pretty much every day, except for the weekends when we do have breakfast. So I'll eat between 12 and 7. And I think fasting is fine. Water fasts are fine. The only caveat is there may be some benefits in having some electrolytes involved. So if you're water fasting, you may want to, consider taking electrolytes as well that way. Because when you're fasting, because you could argue carnivore is a fasting mimicking diet, right? So you're kind of, constantly using ketone fuel, which is what's going to happen when you're fasting. But when you're in that state, you're going to get rid of sodium, potassium, magnesium. So maybe replacing the electrolytes is a good idea while you're doing it. But other than that, I'm a fan. But just don't feel obligated that you have to do that.
Okay. Next question here from D. Lee. How long should the elimination diet be?
Yeah, great question. It's basically about 21 days of just eating, meat for sure. You give yourself at least 21 days. And then after that, you can start adding one item at a time over maybe a 2 to 3 day period. When you look at that document, it'll kind of tell you what symptoms to look for that'll like make you think. Now, this is the interesting thing. If you find that you add something back and your body doesn't tolerate it, that does not mean that you can never, ever add it back. You may have to give yourself a little longer of a break, because a lot of times the longer the break, the more you can kind of play around with adding something back. So I think that's how you want to frame it. But for the most part, 21 days, and then you can start playing around with the things that you want to experiment with.
Okay. Carrie has a question. What are your thoughts on using nutritional yeast on your food?
Yeah, interesting. When I was a vegetarian, I used a lot of I was always trying to think of ways to enhance my diet. And that's one of the things about being a plant-based person. You're always like having to be a little bit smarter. And what I mean by that is when you're a carnivore, it's easy. You just eat meat and it's easy to prepare. You get your air fryer or something, and it's not a big deal. So, but there are benefits of things like nutritional yeast. And I think you have to, again, it depends on your dietary pattern. I think most animal-based folk don't have to think about this much. But I remember learning in my training that your immune system's going to be a little bit stronger. It's really, it has some antibacterial and antiviral properties. It definitely has been known to improve digestion, and it's also a source of protein, particularly for people on a plant-based diet. So, and there's some vitamin benefits as well. So when I think about nutritional yeast, I don't think it's a problem to add it to your food. If you're an animal-based dietary pattern eater, I don't think it's necessarily as beneficial. If you're more of a plant-based dietary eater, I think that in that setting, the benefits of adding that would probably make a little sense.
Okay. A couple of comments here put on the screen for you. My Weight Loss Life says, thank you for all the great information, Dr. Hampton and Brian. We appreciate you. Shell said, thank you so much, Dr. Tony. You have helped so much. Thankful for you. And now we'll go to another question. Linda, how should my meats be flavored on this carnivore diet? So how
Ooh,
about seasoning?
ooh, Dr. Anthony Chafee gonna be mad. I'm just kidding. So, what Dr. Anthony Chafee would say is that just put salt on it and be done with it, right? But again, this is gonna come down to tolerance. When I grew up, we always had Lawry's, right? Lawry's was on everything. Uh, I there's I there's some charcoal seasoning that I like. Um, and so I use a charcoal seasoning with salt in it periodically, just to mix it up a little bit. I totally do fine with just salt. But if you can tolerate seasoning that has the, because all the seasoning are herbs, right? So that's not really carnivore, right? So 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 that does kind of break the rules. However, most people can do that and tolerate it. So if you feel that you want to mix it up every once in a while, I would say primarily try to do salt, but then consider mixing it up a little bit. I just like the charcoal seasoning because charcoal is a great way to remove toxins. Uh, Dr. Anthony Chafee does not use salt. Is that what he's saying in the comments? Did you see that? That's
Oh yeah,
news.
I did see that.
That's news
Hmm.
to me if that's true. So, wow, that's a shocker. But I think salt is necessary for most people on this dietary pattern. In fact, you could argue, they'll say 1 or 2 grams a day for most people, but you can go 3 to 5 grams on carnivore, which is really sounds crazy to say that, but you get rid of a lot of salt on that dietary pattern. So it's all good. I think you do what's best for you, but I personally I'm a little bit more flexible with seasoning, but I think that salt's still where you start, and then you just mix up those other things when you want to have an indulgence day periodically.
All right. D. Kaiser says a huge thank you to the good doctors teaching us to heal ourselves. My faith in some doctors has been restored.
Yeah. Well, what we're hoping is that one day we have a specialty for metabolic health, and that specialty will then lead to people being able to, teach others about metabolic health. So until we get that, we have to go to YouTube and podcasts and things like that, and those low carb conventions that we go to. But there is hope. I would not be in a large health system if I didn't believe that we would be changed, turning the tide in a positive direction. So I'm glad there's hope, and I'm happy I'm one of the people that help you regain it.
All right. So we're going to go to one last question because we're getting close to an hour here. This is for Heather. I am new to carnivore. My thyroid numbers are at the very bottom of the range before medication is recommended. Should I take a drop or two of iodine in my water a day?
Yeah, I think that so many people have thyroid problems because of iodine deficiency. So before we, get too aggressive with medical management, and assuming that most people who have thyroid problems are, kind of subclinical in terms of their symptoms. They call it subclinical hypothyroid, subclinical hyperthyroid. Sometimes when you add the iodine back, it will make things better. So it's pretty safe to do that. And I absolutely agree that that approach before you get more aggressive is a logical first step. Yep.
All right. So that takes us through our questions. I want to put this up on the screen. This is your link tree linked so that everybody can look at that link.
Yes, absolutely. And the link tree, the purpose in a busy clinical practice, because all of this was not done for you guys, to be honest, it was for my patients. But you are my virtual patients in a way. We're just obviously spreading health information for information purposes only. But the link tree gives you a link to what to eat and what not to eat, a handout. I had a great podcast with A. Fox, who is the Black Carnivore, How to Start Carnivore. I got a great video, how to get started on low carb. So if you're looking for like some quick resources that'll help you get started, the link tree just puts it all in one place. I think everybody should have a link tree. My friend here, Brian, has a link tree, and and that's why I linked his link tree in my on my channel with this video, because I wanted to make sure everybody could go to his channel and subscribe. But more importantly, what other resources does Brian believe are helpful? And that way, and we all can, and then you can create your own link tree so you can link your family to resources that you trust and respect.
All right. And the last link I want to put up here, this is for your book, Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes. So if you have not already read this book, it's available on Amazon. I shortened the link here so it's easy to
Yeah,
just
that's
write that
pretty
down and
that's
get
pretty
to.
slick. And by the way, when I wrote that book, 2017 or so, we've all that book has very good information in it because it's all consistent with how I think. The cover though could be a little different because it's got some grains on it, so that's not consistent with how I think. But it was a cute cover. I didn't know better, so I'm planning to change the cover. But the messaging in the book, particularly from a keto perspective, is very consistent with what I feel today is true.
All right. So Dr. Tony, we're at an hour. Thank you for your time today. Any last message that you want to give before we drop offline?
Yeah, just a message of hope that if you or someone that you love, I know we had some comments about husbands and things like that. Understand that everybody's at a different point on their journey. Our job is not to demonize them or to preach to them, but to model what we think is best. And if we model what is best and we get results, we will find that people will be engaged. So just live a life of purpose. Spread this message to as many people as possible. Rather it's my channel, my friend's channel. Let's get this message out and just know that tomorrow is going to be a better day because we now have the tools to heal.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Tony.
It was my pleasure, man. Thank you for inviting me, and let's do it again.
All right. Sounds good. Bye, everybody.